left with just one member to have our quorum before we can then start. No, honorable members, thank you so much. I think we are fully correct now. Other members also are going to be joining us as we go along. As we know that Honorable Fraser is also just joined, and Honorable Togotela also, Biela, has joined, is part of the meeting. I think we are fully correct. Honorable Kanye, Honorable Seme, as well as Honorable Dex have just joined. Thank you so much, honorable members, for availing yourself to this very important meeting. We welcome you, honorable members, our honorable MEC, Mhlekazi. I'm told you've got a wonderful nickname. Ujwag. Yeah, Jwag. I like it, eh? Yeah, as well as your team, Honorable MEC, of course, led by the CFO. At this point in time, I'm not sure whether the HOD will join a bit late, but you are all welcome, as well as our team from the legislature, Babu Chili, as well as Prof. Matingwane and Advocate Benjamin. Yeah, I think that's the team that we have at this point in time from the legislature. But thank you so much, Honorable MEC, for availing yourself, as well as honorable members. The limitation that I have is that we've allocated 2.5 hours. Should be out of here 10:30. Not that we need to rush anything. I'm just mentioning that because we need to do justice on the work that we have to do here. There's an agenda in front of us, which is item number 1, opening welcome, which we have just done. And then we'll deal with the apologies a bit late. We'll adopt the agenda, and then we'll give the Honorable MEC Jwag to do some remarks, and then we'll have the presentation on the 24-25 Unaudited Closeout report, and then we'll have the presentation also on the first quarter financial and non-financial performance for vote 6. We will then have a discussion, but I'm informed that the MEC has requested that we do a further presentation, which we will do it as item number 7. It's not a long presentation, I believe, on the dashboard. If we can include that, I think it's important for us as the Portfolio Committee for Finance, specifically, that we get this presentation. I believe that honorable members can accept that. That is very important presentation, so that we get taken through it. And then we'll have a discussion, which is item number 8, and then close, which is item number 9. It's not a long, it's just the 3 presentations that we are going to be having. Only the remarks from the MEC, I'm sure it would not take more than 10 minutes or so, and then the presentations. So I believe this is not a very long. Of course, we'll give enough time for engagements. If we do not finish at 10:30, we can still go to 11 o'clock before the start of the other meeting at 11 o'clock. So we'll have enough time for us to have a discussion, honorable members. So we therefore, can I then go to item number 2, which is right. Okay, my apologies. We will take the apologies if there are any mistakes. Oh yes. As you know that Honorable Madlopa is outside of the country on legislature business, so she's unable to attend, and therefore Honorable Fraser would stand on her behalf, as well as Honorable de Klerk. Honorable de Klerk is attending another meeting, which is COCTA, I believe. So, but as I indicated earlier, that we've got Honorable Dogotela Ubiela, who's standing on his behalf. So those are the 2 apologies. We can then go straight to the adoption of the agenda. There is one item that we have requested that it be added, honorable members, as I indicated, which is the presentation on the provincial dashboard. We are going to be taken through. That's the item that we're adding into this agenda, that the MEC has requested that we give that, and I believe it's very important for finance. Can I then note hands for the adoption? Honorable Brother Seth moves for the adoption. Any second, honorable members? We are just adopting the agenda. Are you able to adopt Honorable Baisiela? Yes. Honorable Paisela, you know, I always say, Honorable Ishana, you'll bear with me, it's fine. Thank you. Honorable Ishana is seconded. I'm not sure if there's anything else, but I believe that we are in full agreement with the agenda. Thank you so much, honorable members. I noticed that even Honorable Fraser was seconding, so she was thirding. So thank you so much for that. Honorable Mrs. Abba Konkosiam, you can have your remarks. We're not going to limit you in terms of time.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning to all the members of the committee and to my team from Treasury. It's always great to be here to be able to engage, and of course this is a critical part of our process, and that's looking at what transpired last year when it comes to expenses and when it comes to revenue generation. So dealing with the unaudited closeout gives us an understanding of where we are in the financial frame in the province. Now, Chairperson, I've never been one that sugarcoats the fiscal situation. The situation still remains dire. Now, if you look at the unaudited closeout and you look at the departmental unaudited closeout, you'll firstly see that revenue undercollected by 17 million rand, and our expenses, we overspent by 158 million rand. Now, on a budget of 150 odd billion, that doesn't look too serious. It looks like it's within reason. The scary part is that a lot of the expenses have been shifted into accruals. Now, to me, that's a red flag. That's an oil light coming on in my car. And if I don't stop my car and check my engine, I'm going to seize my engine. So we were projecting an over expenditure on midterm by about 9 billion rand. Now you can see that that's dropped down to 158 million. The reality is we're sitting with accruals in the province of about 11 billion rand. Now that means departments are incurring operational costs when they don't have the cash to be able to do that. So that's spending money that you don't have. Then you end up in a situation where you can't pay your suppliers. And this again is where our oversight, and which is why as Treasury we are trying to put in place mechanisms to stop this type of uncash-backed expenditure. One of the reasons, and you'll know the procurement system that's going to come through, we're looking at not just, as you know, we have cash blocking, but we're looking at budget blocking. The Department of Education is one of those departments where if there's any work undertaken outside of their existing operational budget, that money has to be ring-fenced so that we can protect suppliers out there. And as we all know, it's in the main, it is small, medium businesses who are doing business with government. So looking at the bottom line, it looks very nice, but look deeper, go and scratch around in the accruals, and you'll see that we're just shifting money out of our balance sheet and we're actually not paying our suppliers. Which is why also, Chairperson, today you'll see the dashboard, which is now live. And I think the HOD or somebody's going to take us through two dashboards. One is education and one is health. I think where you'll clearly see that money that's owed to suppliers is highlighted. And that is something that the Finance Committee and Portfolio Committees now need to be very, very aware of. Because if it runs away with us, we'll reach a point where we aren't going to be able to operate on the cash that we have. Remembering also that the situation is even worse for the Department of Education. The Department of Education incurred unauthorized expenditure of just short of R1 billion, which has now become a first charge, as we know. this legislature adopted it. It's over 7 years, if I'm not mistaken. So that means the Department of Education's baseline is going to be cut by that R1 billion over the next 7 years. There's more unauthorized expenditure, which is going to have to come to SCOPA to deal with. So that means a department like education is going to start off with a deficit going into budgets, which is, again, why I don't want to sugarcoat the financial situation. We need to be realistic, and we need to be aware of what the challenges are and, in fact, what the dangers are. Now, Chairperson, that's one of the reasons you would have heard me talking about budget methodology, that we have to change the way we do budgeting in this province. In the past, what we've done is we've just taken the previous year's operational expenses and we've added on an inflationary amount, and that's the new budget. If we keep doing that, we're not going to get out of the situation that we're currently in. So you can look and you'll be taken through the unaudited closeout. The departments that are under enormous pressure are education, health, and to a lesser degree, social development. So if we're going to undertake a new budget methodology, what we need to do, firstly with health and education, is we need to get to an accurate baseline, a sort of zero-based budget, if you like. But in order to do that with, let's take the Department of Education. You would know, serving on this committee and serving in SCOPA, that there's a problem with ghost teachers, that we've never been able to find these ghost teachers. Well, I don't suppose you do find ghosts too easily. But we're on top of that now, Chair. We are now, Treasury is undertaking a head count with the Department of Education. We're using an electronic system which has been proven. And this electronic system, quite simply, will allow headmasters at schools to take a photo of the teacher and a photo of the ID. AI will then match the two. That information is then uploaded to a mainframe, and then we match that against Purcell. So it's going to be quite a quick process, we believe, to undertake. The other thing that we've discovered is that if you're a ghost teacher, you don't go on leave. Ghost teachers don't go on leave, they work 12 months. So you just compare the teacher's name to the leave rosters, and quickly you can pick up who's a ghost teacher. So we're on top of this one, and we believe that's going to help. Inflated NSNP figures from principals at schools, inflating the number of pupils. These are all issues we have to address so that we can get to an accurate baseline when it comes to staff loans. As you know, you'll see in here staff loans in the unaudited closeout remains a problem in the Department of Education, and then we can go on to medical legal claims under health, etc., etc. When we've determined what the baseline is, as accurate as possible, then we need to ensure that those three departments, social development, health, and education, get the budget that they deserve. In the past, we've allowed these departments to submit unfunded budgets because of COE pressures. We can't do that because that's what's putting us into trouble. We need to see what the realistic, accurate, projected expenditure for those departments are. They then get protected in the budget allocation, and the balance then has to go to the non-essential departments. Now, that's going to be a painful exercise because there are some departments who are going to find their budgets squeezed even more. But the reality is, Chairperson, this government doesn't work in silos. We're one government, and our critical areas remain our frontline departments, and we need to protect that. Now, you're not going to get this right in 1 year because we don't have that amount of budget allocation. It's going to take a period of 5 to 7 years to be able to get out of this particular situation. But if we don't start the process, we're never going to get anywhere. You know, every journey begins with one step. Just recently also, Chairperson, we appointed our additional members to the Provincial Audit and Risk Committee. It's a committee that I want to use to its maximum. I have given the chair and the committee their marching orders and exactly what it is. Now, what it is they give me an insight into departments when it comes to what's happening and what the risks are. Now, I want to offer the services of what we call PARC, Provincial Audit and Risk Committee. I want to offer them to both the committee, the Finance Committee, and to SCOPA. When there are concerns, and you request through my office, I would have no problem with allowing the chairperson of PARC, which I think already in SCOPA, they do contribute in SCOPA. But also if there are risks that need to be flagged, Chairperson, I'm very happy that Treasury also utilizes it. Because it's one of the areas we can tighten up on fiscal compliance and legislature compliance. And it's one area where if the AG flags certain concerns, that Audit and Risk Committee can assist departments in achieving the turnaround strategy that we need. The Cabinet took a decision, a resolution, that all engagements with PARC, departmental engagements with PARC, will now have to include the CFO, HOD, and the member of the executive, the MEC, so that we can start taking these decisions seriously. Chairperson, I've given you, I don't want to delve into the actual briefing because you'll be given that in detail. But it's a case, and obviously the dashboard, I'm not sure when we're going to do that at the end. That's also something I'd like to talk a little bit more about. But I think at this stage, let's allow the officials, with your permission, Chairperson, to take us through. And Hobby is going to present the closeout for departments, and Liesel will do our public entities. So thank you very much for the opportunity, Chairperson. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much, Honorable MEC. We really appreciate the presentation. Of course, you are telling us things that are very of a serious concern to us, and I'm sure the Portfolio Committee would have a discussion, not now, of course, when we do have a discussion in relation, in particular, with the issue of the expenses that have been shifted, into accruals, which I do not understand it. With over expenditure only on 158 million, but over 11 billion accruals. How is that possible? It's absurd. It doesn't, of course, it's not you who would explain to us. The departments will have to explain to us, and I think this time around we're going to be very hard in trying to get an understanding, because it means they continue to spend, as you say, they then hold the invoices. They don't pay waiting for the new financial year. It means already we are 11 billion on the red when you start the financial year on the 1st of April. It's a worry which I think we ought to deal with aggressively as this Portfolio Committee. But it's a serious worry where I'm sitting on it. But thank you so much for that. We would really have to deal with it. But otherwise, let's go straight to the agenda, into the next presentation, which I believe, I'm not sure if yes, you lead us on that. All right, please do.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Good morning, Honourable members of the Finance Portfolio Committee. My name is Kobi Wangrangani, and I will be taking you through the unaudited closeout report for 2024-25 for the provincial departments. Chairperson, may I please check if the presentation is it visible? May I go ahead? I've got a copy on my side. Okay.
If all members have got, I know that Honorable Fraser might not have received it, but we'll send it to Honorable Fraser as well as Honorable Biela. But I believe that all the other honorable members, we received it last week, if I'm not mistaken, on Thursday or Friday? Thursday, yes. So the majority of us do have the presentation. You can just proceed. If you can be closer into the mic so that we hear you. I gather that you've got a nice, quick voice. We might not hear you.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Am I audible now? Is it better? Okay, thank you. So this is the outline of the presentation. We'll just be covering revenue expenditure accruals, conditional grants, infrastructure, as well as funds that were specifically and exclusively appropriated. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in terms of the revenue, the MSC did go into details regarding how we closed the 2024-25 financial year in terms of revenue. So you'll see on this slide that at the end of the year, there was an under-collection of 17.3 million rand. And I think this is actually for the first time in a while that provincial departments under-collected on own revenue, which is a concern for us. So if you look at this slide, you'll see that the Department of Health contributed to this under-collection, and they under-collected by over 100 million rand. And this was partly offset by the over-collection by the Department of Transport. So I'll go into details regarding this in the next few slides. Can we please move to the next slide? Thank you. So this slide just shows you at economic classification level, you'll see that tax receipts under-collected by 165.5 million rand, and this was offset by an over-collection on fines, penalties, and forfeits of 161.3 million rand. On the next slide, we discuss the main sources of revenue for the province, and as we may be aware that this is mostly motor vehicle license fees that are collected by the Department of Transport, casino taxes and horse racing taxes that are collected by Economic Development, as well as patient fees collected by Department of Health, as well as the interest that is earned by Provincial Treasury on the IGCC accounts. So in aggregate, as I've mentioned, that provincial departments, they collected 4.159 billion rand, and this was against an adjusted, a final appropriation of 4.177, resulting in the under-collection of 17.3. If we look at the main reasons for this under-collection, the Department of Health under-collected by 101.390 million, and this was mostly against sales of goods and services other than capital assets, and this really stems from the issues with the Road Accident Fund. So when we unpack this, we see that the underperformance was mostly from lower patient receipts from Road Accident Fund. So they classify patients according to H2 or H3 income thresholds, and these patients, they contribute 20 to 30% of the medical costs. So there were shortfalls in this regard. There was minimal revenue that was collected by the Road Accident Fund. We are also aware that there's also been ongoing issues with the Road Accident Fund since 2020, and they have not been able to make payments on a regular basis. And there's also quite a lot of administrative inefficiencies at the RAF currently, and this really does hamper the ability of revenue to be collected. There's also challenges with collecting revenue from various government organizations. So there we've listed correctional services, as well as SAPS, Defence Force, COIDA, and the Department of Justice. However, in response to this, because we do note that it is a concern, 100 million, it's quite a lot of revenue to lose. We note that this is a concern. So National Treasury, as well as the National Department of Health, they are collaborating with provincial departments to identify and implement strategies that are aimed at enhancing revenue collections. And this also forms part of the Provincial Financial Recovery Plan that the MSC touched on. Next slide, please. The Department of Education, they under-collected by 21.238 million, and this was mostly on staff debt. It's becoming quite difficult to accurately predict for this because they are so irregular in nature. So the shortfall really stems from lower than expected recoveries, and this is from officials who have already exited the system, so it makes collecting debt from them more challenging. In terms of the Department of Transport, the department overcollected by 66.479 million, and this was on sales of goods and services other than capital assets, on fines, penalties, and forfeits, as well as sale of capital assets. So there is revenue that the department collects from abnormal load permits. So we're also noting that revenue from this source was higher than expected due to the fact that the department issued more permits in this regard. There was also an unplanned auction of redundant vehicles and equipment, and this also contributed to higher than anticipated receipts. On the next slide, we are discussing the Department of Human Settlements. The department overcollected by 19 million rand, and this was against transactions in financial assets and liabilities, and this is related to the recovery of staff debts. Here we say that it's related to salary overpayments, breach of bursary contracts, and revenue collected in respect of previous year's expenditure. There was also funds that were collected from the FLISP program, which are refunded to the department when beneficiaries are disqualified for a home loan. Further contributing to this, there were unspent funds that were recalled from various municipalities, from various projects as listed. I'm not going to go through them, Honorable Chairperson, just to say that we did see there that we did receive revenue from the unspent housing funds from these municipalities listed here. They reflect an overcollection of 9.8 million, and this is mainly from horse racing taxes because of the increase in online betting. COGTA overcollected by 7.5 million, and this was mainly due to higher than anticipated transactions in financial assets and liabilities from the two municipalities, Umuzi Wabantu as well as Umsunduzi municipalities. So these funds were transferred during 2022-23, and they were for various projects such as the Harding Trading Store as well as the Heroes Acre Memorial Park. The department has, however, indicated that they will be requesting for these funds to be appropriated back to them in the 2025-26 budget adjustments budget, and this will be likely used to offset budget pressures that the department is experiencing. Moving on to expenditure at the end of the 2024-25 financial year. So as the MEC has indicated that we do see that departments, they overspent by 158.6 million. So here we're able to see that the main contributor to this was the Department of Education. Honorable members can also see that the other departments did underspend, so this was offset by the over-expenditure by the Department of Education. On the next slide, slide 11, at economic classification, we see that compensation of employees was overspent by over 1.5 billion rand, and this contributed significantly to the over-expenditure. The remaining categories of economic classification underspent. Next slide, please. Just to note that these figures, they are the unaudited figures for the province, and that the audit process is still underway. Provincial Treasury will then prepare audited IYM once the audit process is complete. Next slide, please. Honorable Chairperson, I will be touching on the reasons for the over-under expenditure by department in the next few slides. I will start with the Department of Education. The department overspent by 516.627 million at the end of the year, and this was mainly on compensation of employees. So the department has been significantly impacted by the 2021-22 MTEF budget cuts, and this continues to render a lot of the posts that are filled and vacant unaffordable. So the department has 97,172 filled posts at the end of 2024-25, and about 2,000 of these posts were rendered unaffordable. So in addition to this, the 2024 wage agreement, which National Treasury expected provinces to budget a 4.4% increase, but the agreement was actually reached at 4.7%, but no additional funding was received for the shortfall, so the 0.3%. So this added to the pressures that the department is facing. However, we do note that some of the programs could budget partly for this increase, while other programs such as Program 2, and that's the biggest program that funds COE, they were unable to budget for any increase in compensation. The next bullet looks at how much the cost of the 4.7% wage agreement costs. So it's estimated at about 2.2 billion rand, and there's another 403 million rand that's required for the implementation of the 1.5 pay progression. A further 44 million rand was required to cover the shortfall on the notches for the public service wage adjustments that are above the 4.7%. And combined, these costs amount to about 2.733 billion rand for the department. On the next slide, the Department of Human Settlements, they underspent by 100.005 million, and this mostly relates to the Human Settlements Development Grant, the HSDG. These funds were received during the second adjustment budget in March 2025, so they were received quite late into the 2024-25 financial year. They were transferred to the Msunduzi municipality for the Alu Ridge Social Housing Project, but upon the preparation of the 24-25 AFS in May, the department, they sought a technical opinion from the Provincial Treasury regarding how to treat the transfer of these funds, because the funds had not yet been spent by Msunduzi at the end of the financial year. So according to the opinion and according to the new requirements of the modified cash standard system, the department was then advised to treat the transfer as an advance payment to the municipality, and therefore the department had to reverse this from expenditure in line with the new requirements of the modified cash standard. Hence, the underspending was recorded. Provincial Treasury has since written to National Treasury, and we have requested a rollover of these funds, and we are still in contact with National Treasury, communicating with them regarding this rollover request. Office of the Premier, they underspent by 75.088 million, and these funds mostly relate to the KZN Youth Empowerment Fund. Applications were sourced towards the end of 2024, and they were subsequently captured in early 2025, and due diligence was then undertaken in February, and evaluation approval was underway during March. The department has requested for these funds to be rolled over, and this will also be considered in the lead up to the 2025-26 adjustment estimate. In terms of the Department of Agriculture, the department underspent by 86.4 million, and this was against the Comprehensive Agriculture Support Program, the CASP grant. So this relates to the implementation of the first produce agri-hub by the Richards Bay IDZ. There were delays in finalizing the implementation plan. However, the department has received provisional approval from National Treasury for these funds to be rolled over to 25-26. Next slide, please. In terms of the provincial legislature, the legislature underspent at the end of 24-25 by 29.084 million, and this was against both programs as well as the members' remuneration. So if we break it down, it looks as follows. The members' remuneration underspent by 7.528 million. This was against compensation of employees as well as goods and services. If that underspending of 7.528 million is excluded, because this is a direct charge on the Provincial Revenue Fund, then the operational underspending for the legislature was 21.566 million, and it's explained as follows. Goods and services underspent by 9.481 million, and this was against various goods and services categories. Transfers and subsidies to non-profit institutions was also lower than expected, and this relates to the transfers to political parties. So the number of political parties was reduced from 8 to 6, hence the savings that were realized in this regard. Machinery and equipment was also underspent at year end, and this was due to the tools of trades for staff that were not purchased by the end of the year due to the SCM processes that were taking longer than anticipated. On the next slide, thank you, we are discussing ETIA. The department underspent by 33.026 million at the end of the year, and this was mostly against compensation of employees. There were delays in filling key critical posts against compensation of employees. Goods and services was also underspent against various goods and services items. There was also underspending on machinery and equipment. There were delays that were experienced in the finalization of the procurement of vehicles as well as office equipment. On the next slide, we discuss Provincial Treasury. The department underspent by 24.501 million at the end of the year. This was also against compensation of employees. There were internal delays in filling vacant posts. There was also underspending against goods and services due to lower than anticipated spending on various items, such as advertising, catering, departmental activities, as well as contractors, mainly as a result of the MEC's directive to cut costs on engagement, cancellation on the lease agreement in the marine building in Durban, property payments due to the reduction of security personnel acquired on the new contract, as well as travel and subsistence, as many of the meetings have been held virtually. Important to note, honourable members, is that the Department of Health, they showed a balanced budget at the end of the year, and this is significantly different from the 597.874 million that the department reported in the preliminary closeout report. So what happened is that the department has since deferred expenditure to 25-26 to reduce the overspending in 2024-25, and these are some of the issues that have come up in the AMC's opening remarks. And they removed payments that were captured on BAS but not actually paid by year end from the system. These payments will be recaptured on BAS and they will be paid in 2025-26. The next section of the presentation covers accruals and payables not recognized. Just to reiterate the statements that were made by the MEC, the table above shows the accruals and payables recognized at the end of 2024-25. In addition to that, there are payments that were captured on BAS, and they were thus reflected as expenditure in the slides that were presented earlier. However, these were not released because the departments did not have cash to release these payments, and these amount to about 3.2 billion rand. So the 7.7 plus the 3.2, it's about the 11 billion that the MEC was referring to that is now brought into 25-26. And this will influence the budget for 25-26 because these payments will need to be made in the new financial year. On the next slide, we discuss some of the trends that we've picked up in terms of accruals and payables recognized. Also to note that further details they are provided in Chapter 2 of the report that is being handed out. So each department does have a section that speaks to accruals and payables and provides further details on the figures by department. So some of the departments, and we see this trend with health and education, that they deferred expenditure to 2025-26, and this was to reduce overspending in 24-25. Based on the unaudited figures, there's about 7.7 billion rand that's accrued from 24-25 to 2025-26. And as I've mentioned, that there's about another 3.2 billion rand that was captured on BAS, and those payments were not released. And also upon analysis, we find that there's another 3.2 billion of the 7.7 billion that was listed as more than 30 days in arrears. And this is a significant increase from what we saw in 2023-24. This is a concern because it becomes then its non-compliance by the departments with Treasury regulations and has a significant impact on provincial audit outcomes. Next slide, please. The next section looks at conditional grants. The next slide, please. The total under spending for conditional grants was 190.099 million. The trends are discussed at the next slide, please. Thank you. The Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, as I've mentioned, that they underspent on the CASP grant by 86.4 million rand, and this was due to delays in the implementation of the fresh produce agri-hub, as I've mentioned. And since the end of the financial year, the department has received provisional approval to roll over these funds to 2025-26. The Department of Education also showed underspending on the Learners with Profound Intellectual Disabilities grant. This was about 3.317 million rand. The department did request for these funds to be rolled over, and they did receive provisional approval from National Treasury for these funds to be rolled over. The Department of Human Settlements, as I've also mentioned, that they underspend on the HSDG by 100 million rand, and we have requested a rollover of these funds from National Treasury, and as I've also indicated that we are still communicating with National Treasury regarding this rollover request. Next slide, please. Thank you. The next slide. In terms of infrastructure, At the end of the 2024-25 financial year, there was underspending on infrastructure of 1.382 billion rand. On the next slide, the Department of Transport shows underspending of 956.698 million, and this was mainly against maintenance and repairs, new infrastructure assets, capital as well as non-infrastructure. There was slow progress that was made with some of the maintenance projects. There was also late appointment of panel service providers to implement some of the capital projects. And there was also non-filling of vacant infrastructure-related posts that contributed to the underspending by the department. In terms of the Department of Health, the department underspent by 220.681 million. This was mainly against new infrastructure assets capital, as well as upgrades and additions capital. So the department purposefully delayed projects because of budget pressures under new infrastructure assets. And in terms of upgrades and additions capital, this was also lower than budgeted for, and this is mainly due to the generator plan being put on hold as load shedding has eased, as well as slow progress made on various water reticulation projects. On the next slide, the Department of Human Settlements, they show unaudited underspending on infrastructure of 94.892 million, and this was largely against infrastructure transfers capital, and this relates to the HSDG underspending. Department of Agriculture also shows underspending of 86.4. This relates to the CASP grant that was underspent at year end. The last section looks at funds that were specifically and exclusively appropriated. In the table on slide 30, we see that departments had a final appropriation of 3.188 billion in terms of funds that are specifically and exclusively appropriated. There's also underspending of 94.373 at year end, and the reasons for this are discussed on the last slide. The Office of the Premier underspent by 75 million rand against the KZN Youth Empowerment Fund. And as I've mentioned, this is due to the processes that are still underway, and the department has submitted a request to have these funds rolled over to 2025-26. Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, they also show underspending on construction projects. There was also a further underspending on funds that were not transferred to Upongolo municipality for the construction of the Belgrade Fitness Center. The Department of Social Development also underspent on their specifically and exclusively appropriate funding by 5.472 million, and this was across various programs, and this is due to the low demand for services. There was also low capacity in some of the NPOs, as well as lower claims from organizations. COGTA underspent by 3.471 million, and this relates to the back pay of Izinduna. To give some context to this, of the 205 Izinduna that were to be paid from the rollover, 143 were paid, 62 remained unpaid in respect of the administration of the deceased estates, as there were unresolved family disputes. 44 were due to non-payment. 44 were due for payment and will be paid in 2025-26. 2 of these names were duplicates, and 16 under anomalies with no payment that is due to them. To close, honorable members and honorable chairperson, we do note that some of the departments, they do show underspending on their specifically and exclusively appropriate funding. However, when you look at the expenditure for the vote as a whole, you find that the department either shows overspending or full expenditure, which then suggests that these funds may have been used for other purposes, and this is then in contravention of the PFMA. So this detail is brought in to section 2 of the reports, and its further analysis is provided in each departmental chapter. Thank you, Chairperson.
No, thank you so much for that presentation. I believe that we can take the second presentation. We would have a discussion. The honourable members are noting. Yes, President.
Good morning, members. I'm not sure if I'm audible. I'm Liesl Curtis. I'll take you quickly through the public entity presentation on closeout. We'll look at revenue, expenditure, infrastructure spending, and then the rationalisation. When we get to rationalisation, I'll skip a few slides on the background and the historic progress, and we'll go on how it impacted on 24-25, if that is all right with the members. Next slide, the slide with the big table. Just quickly, if we can look at the second last column, there's an overcollection there of 418. On the last column, you see that most entities collected around about 100%. It was just Itala Development Finance Corporation and the Growth Fund Agency that then overcollected. There are also some under-collections in between, but we'll go to the detail on the next slide. The entities that showed aggregate overcollection, and then that came to 418 million, that is Dubai Tradeport. They overcollected by about 13 million, largely due to higher than budgeted collection from cargo revenue. Itala Development Finance Corporation, they had significant overcollection of over 430 million, and that's ascribed to revenue from tenants for utilities such as water and electricity, as well as penalties that they charge on overdue accounts, which were not adequately budgeted for. The Growth Fund Agency overcollected by 43 million, largely because of interest earned on large cash reserves in the entity's bank account. Ezemvelo overcollected by 4 million, and that's largely due to higher than expected admission fees from visitors from the entity's reserve, as well as funds from reserves that were brought into the income to cover the cost of the budget overruns in respect of Mid-Manitala Reserve road maintenance projects. Amafa overcollected by 3.4 million, and that's largely due to higher than expected number of building permit applications and also more visitors visiting the heritage sites that are managed by Amafa. The overcollection was partially offset by undercollection by Richards Bay. The IDZ undercollected by 74 million, and that's largely ascribed to less of the DTIC funds that's brought into income, and that's in line with the slow spending on multi-year projects. This was partially offset by higher than anticipated income from interest earned on cash in the bank account and funds invested. ADA undercollected by 4.9 million, and that's largely due to under-transfer received from the National Skills Fund, as there was miscommunication regarding the intended beneficiaries between the learnership and the skills programs. Next slide, there's a table again, just quickly showing you what is own revenue in terms of the collection. You'll see the big collectors there, Ezemvelo, Dubai Tradeport, Itala Development Finance Corporation, and then also if you look at the Economic Regulatory Authority and the Growth Fund. Then if we can also just quickly glance at rollover, because that indicates the historic trend in terms of entities being able to spend their budget or not, and you'll see most entities had quite a bit of rollovers from 23-24 that they then had to spend in 24-25. On the next slide, just the detail of the overcollection, the major collection by entities. Sorry, let me just go there. So if we look at Ezemvelo, they collected 249 million, and that's largely due to tourism income, donations, interest earned on cash in the bank account, as well as project that's funded by DFFE and NDT, where the entity is the implementing agent. Dubai Tradeport collected 250.9 million, and that's largely in respect of property rentals, cargo handling fees, and interest on positive cash balances in the bank account, as well as investments. The Sharks Board collected 46 million, and that's largely from meshing fees, the hiring out of the hall at the Shark Board head office, admission fees, and lease rentals from the electronic billboard. Richards Bay IDZ collected 94 million, and that's largely from rental and land leases, as well as interest earned on cash in the bank account and investments. IDFC collected 1.896 billion, and that's mainly from fee income from new loan initiation fees, the rentals from tenants in their buildings, profits from water and electricity from rental properties, as well as interest income from loan disbursements. The Growth Fund Agency collected 130.8 million, and that's largely from interest earned on loans and investments, as well as positive cash balances in the bank account. KZN ERA, which is the combination of the old Gaming and Betting and Liquor Authority, collected 30 million, and that's from licensing, registration, and investigation fees, as well as interest on positive cash balances in the bank account. And then Amafa collected 12 million, and that's largely ascribed to building permit application fees, the visitors to heritage sites, the interest earned on positive cash balances and lease rentals, as well as the utilization of funds from accumulated reserves that's held by the entity. The next slide, the summary of expenditure by public entity for 24-25. Again, if we can quickly look at the unders and overs, the second to last column, you'll see the bottom line, there's an overspending of 157 million, and that's largely because of Itala Development Finance Corporation, and there's also a small overspending by Amafa, and the majority of entities then underspent. We'll go into the detail next. The unaudited expenditure for 24-25 was 102.8% of the final appropriation, showing overspending of 157 million. The entities underspent against the budgets were Zulu Royal Household Trust, and there was a small underspending of 498 million. It was largely due to travel invoices, which were received late from service providers and were not processed by year end. And then there was a delay in the installation of air conditioners in one of the palaces. That was offset by overspending on the purchase of a vehicle, which will be used to service the palaces, as well as for software license renewal fees, which were not adequately budgeted for. The entity requested that the amount be rolled over to meet its commitments. Agribusiness Development Agency, they underspent by 24 million, largely ascribed to delays in the implementation of training and capacity buildings. As I alluded to earlier on, there was miscommunication with NSF, and there was a discrepancy on the beneficiary numbers. There were also outstanding invoices for water and goods audit for Makatini Irrigation Scheme. Orders were placed for goods, including fertilizer, tools, consumables, and those were not delivered by year end. There was also hosting of a website still underway. Invoices for the 24-25 audit had not yet been processed, whereas the monthly contracted fees for security, staff wellness, and market access and branding for March 2025 had not been received by year end. There was also an order for a pool vehicle for use by the staff that had not been finalized, and there are some vacant posts in the entity. They submitted a request for rollover of 10 million, and that was approved by DARD. The underspent funds from National Skill Fund of 6 million are available to now roll out in 25-26 as per the agreement. Nsamelo underspent by 44 million, and that's largely because of vacant posts. Maintenance projects were still in progress. These include maintenance at Hilltop and Luteni, internal gravel roads, and then also pothole repairs at HIP, Mpila Camp Safari tents, upgrade of staff accommodation, and certain procurement processes had not been finalized. Then there's also the TRURS, the Township Rural Economies Revitalizing Strategy, in terms of which the skills development projects only started in March. There was also a new bridge that was to replace the Mansinia Bridge in HIP that was delayed because of a complex environmental impact assessment that was required. There were fencing projects still underway. Several water care projects did not spend as planned due to SCM delays. Vehicles were ordered but not delivered by year end. And then because of the cyber incident, the e-permit system upgrades were also delayed. Furthermore, underspending was partly offset by overspending on the water, electricity, fuel and gas, travel and subsistence amounts, as well as vehicle maintenance. Of the underspending, 20 million was approved by ETIA for rollover. Dubai Trade Board underspent by 43 million. They've got some vacancies. There were also outstanding invoices from suppliers. There were fewer marketing events held than were planned. Discounts were received on Microsoft licensing. The new warehouse management system for the cargo terminal was not procured as they needed more market research. No response was received from tenders which were advertised for pond maintenance service. That's for the aquaculture. And to purify the water, and the programs with thus referred to 25-26. And then IT services spending was also lower than anticipated, as the customers use less broadband than what was envisaged. The underspending was offset by higher than spending anticipated spending on audit fees and legal fees for the recovery of outstanding rentals from tenants. The 43 million was requested for rollover, and at the time that we prepared this report, it was still being considered by ETIA. And then there was 13 million that Provincial Treasury approved, that was to be retained in respect of the horticultural project and the automotive supplier park. Sharksport underspent by 6 million, and that's because of vacant positions, outstanding invoices for water and electricity, outstanding invoices for consumables such as chemicals for the research lab, and also bait for the shark safety gear. Fewer research studies were undertaken or published, fewer symposia and collaborative events were attended. There were also fewer educational outreach programs to schools, and some small maintenance projects were still underway at year end. The entity also did not need to replace some of the office furniture and computer equipment as planned, mainly because of their vacancies. Of the surplus, 6 million was committed and will be requested as a rollover for ETIA's consideration. TIC underspent by 6 million, and that's largely because of project delays, and those projects are the leather processing integrated eco hub, the Drakensberg cable car project, the one-stop program, the CRMP, that's the customer relationship management project, and then also some events. Estimated cost far exceeded the event budgets, and the attendance and participation was thus not approved. The underspending was partly offset by overspending against compensation of employees in relation to the settlement claims of 3 former employees, as instructed by the CCMA. In addition, the entity overspent on the hosting and marketing costs of the KZN Investment Conference and higher than budgeted costs relating to the audit, IT services, insurance costs, and subscription fees. The full amount was committed, but the entity was still busy reconciling its cash position and to determine the value of the funds rolled over from prior years at the time that the unaudited closeout report was being prepared. KZN TAFA, that's the old film and tourism entities, underspent by 38 million. There were delays in filling of vacant posts because the salaries are not aligned to the DPSA. Also, the NDT funded Nelson Mandela Capture Site project. There was an appointed main contractor that requested for the termination of the contract, and then the new contractor had to be appointed. The KwaZulu-Natal Cave Precinct project, the Nzikeni May Lodge upgrade and maintenance projects, they were all delayed due to lengthy processes undertaken by ETIA to register the community trust. And then at the KwaZulu, the scope of the project changed. Some of the film production development projects and industry skills development projects were still ongoing at year end. And then delays in the appointment of the Enterprise Development Adjudication Panel, that's to approve application from tourism SMMEs for non-financial assistance. The unprocessed invoices for travel and accommodation, cell phones, etc. And then they deferred the purchase of new office equipment and laptops in line with the delayed filling of vacancies. 17 million was committed and 46 million was accrued. This is still under consideration by ETIA. The entity will also still need to finalize its request to NDT to retain funds rolled over from prior years. Richards Bay IDZ underspent by 78 million. And that's largely ascribed to ongoing construction of top structures for ProStar Paints and Boerto Industries. Both companies are awaiting confirmation of further funding that's required, and that's from DTIC. The ongoing electrical upgrades at Phase 1A were delayed because of adverse weather conditions and challenges to obtain worker permits. And then there's the Mandlazini bulk water pipeline project. It was still in the tender process. The underspending, though, is offset to a large extent by the cost of deforestation of a site in Phase 1F, and that was under budgeted for. And the purchase of Phase 1D from Umhlatuzi Municipality, that exceeded the budget available. As a Schedule 3G provincial business enterprise, the entity can remain its unspent funds and roll it to the next year. Italo Development Finance Corporation, they overspent by 424.6 million by year end, and that's because they've had an increase in bad loans because of the non-payment of installments by SME clients. The rent rates, utilities were higher than anticipated, and that was exacerbated by water leaks which have not been repaired by the municipalities. They were also higher than budget professional fees, such as legal and debt collection fees. And the overspending was partly offset by underspending against vacant posts, the refurbishment of properties damaged by the July 21 civil unrest, as well as acquisition of fewer computers and furniture items not budgeted for in line with the need. Apart from its operational budget, the IDFC manages projects on behalf of ETIA. The significant ones are the Itala Stock Limited, which is a subsidiary of IDFC. 49 million was transferred to cover operational costs. There's the clothing and textile hub. Construction is underway, and 30 million of the available 38 million was disbursed by year end. There's the Shared Economic Infrastructure and SME and Co-ops Incubation Fund. 19 million was disbursed of available funds of 34 million. Ndumo Retail Development Service, 12 million was spent. The available budget there is 49 million. The Bakery Incubation Project, 7 million was disbursed for the project out of available 9 million. Pulp and paper manufacturing is multi-year project, and 14 million was disbursed from available budget of 18 million. Then there's the Tokazi Royal Lodge, 8 million was spent from available 11 million to refurbish and expand the lodge owned by His Majesty the King. In addition, there's also an amount of 24.5 million that was received years back from DART towards the Ntingwe tea operational cost, including the rainforest certification. An interim board was appointed to facilitate the outstanding audits from 25-26 onward, and then to do evaluation of the company. However, the interim board's term has since lapsed in 24-25, and no progress was recorded on the preparation of the annual financial statements. KZN Era underspent by 1.2 million, and that's due to the acquisition of vehicles and IT equipment that was delayed, and then the development of the GROP, the Gambling Regulators Online Portal, that was still in progress at year end. That was partly offset by overspending on compensation of employees, outsourced legal services in respect of litigation on liquor license applications, and unbudgeted increases and that are contested in disciplinary cases. Under budgeted increase in operational costs such as office rentals, security, electricity and insurance. The full underspent amount was committed, and the request will be submitted to ETIA Provincial Treasury for consideration. Growth Fund underspent by 15 million against the budget of 99, and that's because of vacancies, quite high level, the CEO, CIO, Chief Risk Officer, and then lower than budgeted spending on legal services for drafting of contracts as there were no new investments. Advertising for fund applications and marketing costs were lower than anticipated due to little investment activity, pending the review of the business model. The NT also realized savings on remote working arrangements, and then the planned leasehold improvements such as partitioning and security fixtures were delayed, and that was only initiated after moving to their new premises in the last quarter of the year. As a Schedule 3D business enterprise, the entity may retain its unspent funds. Moses Kutani Research Institute underspent by 11 million, and that was for the non-payment of bursaries, lower than anticipated research data collection costs as they use local collectors, and that decreased travel and accommodation costs. The setup of 4 of the ICT hubs is still underway, and then the KZN Provincial Tourism Master Plan was delayed because of SCM. Commercialization of Innovation and Research Financial Support Program to assist researchers and innovators was not fully allocated to beneficiaries by year end. There's MERSITA funds for planned skills development programs. It was committed but not fully spent, and then also the invoices for the audit was not yet processed. 11 million of that was committed, but they still had to finalize the rollover request. Amafa overspent by 2.7 million, largely due to the Arts Centre program and hosting of the music and cultural festivals, which were undertaken by MAFA on behalf of the National Department. Funds were received by NDSAC. However, the entity inadvertently did not update the budget in this regard. This was offset to some extent as some heritage projects such as manufacturing of plaques, the fencing of the Lundi Heritage Site, KwaZulu site renovation, Siburu Cave 3D modeling, as well as the Princess Magogo research that was still being undertaken. And also some of the research projects were undertaken at a lower cost. The overspending was offset to some extent by savings on the acquisition of a vehicle, as insurance covered this cost, and they overcollected against its revenue budget by 3.4 million, which resulted in a net surplus, which was fully committed by year end. Just if we can look at this quickly, the expenditure of public entity, just to show you the picture of the composition. Just if we look at the compensation of employees, that makes up 36.2% overall, goods and services 41%, and then transfers and subsidies a small portion of 0.2%, payments for capital assets also small at 8.9%. Infrastructure spending by entity, that's, well, I can't see the slide number 26. Again, if we can just look, the major infrastructure spending by entities is by Zulu Royal Trust, Isabelo, Dubai Trade, Port Sharksport, Richards Bay and Itala. Quite fluctuating trend in percentage of spending, with the big corporates there being Isabelo and Richards Bay in terms of underspending of infrastructure. Zulu Royal Trust spent 5.7 million, and the final appropriation was 5 million. It was spent on day-to-day maintenance of 10 royal palaces. They also installed new aircons and purchased building materials for construction of 3 rondels at the new Emma Shobeni Palace. The overspending relates to unbudgeted repairs of cold rooms, air conditioner installations, and electrical and plumbing repairs. Isabelo spent 29 million, the budget was 57. 23 was towards the maintenance of facilities on roads. Underspending was largely due to slow implementation of maintenance projects, such as Hilltop Plutonium Pila Camp renovations. They were delayed due to varying challenges experienced by the entity, ranging from environmental concerns, price escalation, contractor performance, as well as SEM and technical service capacity challenges, and that was addressed in the second half of the year. Dubai Trade Ports spent 135 million against a budget of 98, and that's largely on the construction of medium-sized factories in Trade Zone 2, various smaller capital work projects and maintenance. The overspending of 37 million is largely due to the acceleration of building projects to meet tenant demands, and that was offset by less maintenance required. KwaZulu Sharksport spent 6 million against the budget of 7.4. This was towards maintenance, minor capital refurbishments and roof repairs. The underspending was in respect of ongoing capital projects at the base stations. Richards Bay underspent by 96 million. The budget was largely underspent because of construction of the top structures for ProStop Paints and Boetis Industries, which was still in progress at year end. And then also the Mandlazini bulk water pipeline was still at tender stage, and the electrical upgrades at phase 1 experienced delays due to adverse weather conditions and challenges with workers' permits. IDFC spent 98 million against the budget of 115. The underspending was largely due to capital investments still ongoing, such as the refurbishment of the properties that were damaged in the July 2021 civil unrest. Rationalisation. With your permission, I'm going to skip the first 3 slides that talks to the history of the rationalisation project, and I'm going to look at how it impacted. On slide 33, the major implications on the 24-25 budget performance. The entities were not able to fill all their critical vacant posts, and where a post was considered to be support, authority was granted to fill such on a contract basis. This impacted on all the entities under ETIA regardless of merging status. The entities had significant underspending related to capacity challenges, which in turn led to savings in operational costs. Cost savings resulting from vacant posts were not quantified, and entities' baselines going forward have not yet been reduced as a result of the rationalisation. Entities have been informed that there will be no further funding support from Treasury or the line function departments. They would need to absorb the cost of the merger from within their existing baselines. Some entities experienced governance challenges due to the rationalisation process. As such, there were quite a few vacant positions in many of the CEO and CFO posts. Subsequently, in April 2024, Provincial Executive Council also took a resolution that remuneration of staff and public entities needs to be aligned to that of DPSA. And this exercise has not yet been finalised, and that also further impacts negatively on the entity's ability to fill the posts. There are a number of issues that need to be, this is matters for consideration, number of issues that need to be considered and carefully monitored as they may have significant impact on the entity's operations and ability to deliver on their mandates. The unaudited closeout report raises such matters for discussion at the end of each chapter. Some of the more significant ones are highlighted here. If the overspending of IDFC is discounted, the entities in aggregate showed a slow rate of spending with underspending of 267 million against the final appropriation. The underspending related to capacity challenges, which in turn led to savings in operational costs. Implementation of maintenance and capital projects remain a challenge. Vacancy savings were partly offset by budget pressures relating to overtime costs, acting allowance, and the staff exit costs. The majority of entities overprovided for staff costs and underprovided for operational costs, such as utilities, security and cleaning costs, as well as insurance. The merging entities need to undertake extensive reprioritization within their budgets to align the funds to the priority spending programs and also to make some provision towards implementation of the merger. Some entities experience governance challenges, as I said, the CFOs, and then some of them were not filled on a permanent basis and only for the interim contract. So there, all the reds are where we don't have permanent posts. The Zulu Royal Trust also is a challenge because the same roles are assigned to the CEO and CFO. In the absence of a board, the CEO, CFO is also the accounting officer or the accounting authority, and that issue is conflict of interest challenges. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lizette. I'm not sure if you who's going to take the next presentation. Yeah, I'm going to be. Oh, it's Kachen, CFO. Thank you so much. We are taking notes, honourable members. I believe then that we will then take the discussion after because this is the second last. We still have going to take the last one relating to the dashboard. Thank you so much, CFO Kachen.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to the members of the committee. I'll be presenting Q1 financial report. I'm sure the members received the presentation slides. They are also projected on the screen. Chair, to report the Q1, maybe we will all recall that we started Q1 slowly. Reason being, National Treasury was running that bus system upgrade. As a result, there were many hiccups because they had to run a lot of tests to make sure that the upgrade from version 5 to version 6 happened without problems. As a result, during that time, running payments on the system was not happening. I think first 3 weeks of April. But however, now the problem has been solved. The department is operating smoothly as far as the bus system is concerned. To report on the Q1, maybe why I'm highlighting that, because you'll note some of the spending was very slow because we effectively started spending or to effect payments by last week of April. If we look at the slide 1, the first tab, it simply indicates the budget allocated to the department of 730, and they said at the end of June, first quarter, we spent 153 million of that. Second tab of that slide indicates the historical spend going back in 21-22. up to the recently confirmed financial year that was audited 24-25. You'll see that during those COVID years, the underspending was very high because not much activities were happening. Some of the functions could not be performed. However, as the time progressed and we started spending and going back, on average, if we look historically, the department has been underspending around 10 million rand. However, this year we had a high number of vacancies. As a result, it's grown from 10 last year, which is 23-24. In 24-25, we underspent by 26 million rand. I'll explain that when we come to programs. Currently, we don't project to under or to overspend in the current financial year. Also, we note that, or we are reporting that end of last year, we submitted an application or a request for suspending about 20.1 million rand from last year to the current financial year. Then the last tab also indicated high level the actuals against the projections by programs. The blue tabs or bars indicating the actual expenditure and the orange or brown tabs indicating the projections. You'll see program 1 spent less than what they projected. Program 2, it equated the projections. Program 3 spent more than what they projected, and program 4 slightly spent below the projected amount, and program 5 also, it was almost equal to the projections. If we go to the next slide by programs, we're looking at program 1. Program 1 being administration is projecting to overspend by 6.2 million rand. Reason given there, we're projecting under COE within program 1 to underspend by 4 million rand. However, on goods and services, there is a pressure. Mainly that pressure is coming from the projects that we are currently running as a department that relates to financial recovery plan. Part of it, the MEC highlighted on it, the procurement system that the department will develop, the headcount, all those costs that are associated with those projects for the financial recovery plan for the province. They are projected under program 1 within the office of the HOD. When we go to program 1 in details, I'll indicate that to the committee. Program 2 is projecting to underspend by 1.8. Mainly they have vacancies. Program 3 projecting to overspend by 1.7. The pressure there is coming from bank charges. I think last year or in 23-24 and part of last year, the province moved from accepting cash at their pay points, and we are all now using these cash card machines where we tap or we insert the card and effect payments. So most of the charges, we started seeing them coming in due to the use of that system. So we have pressure coming from bank charges, and that will be corrected at adjustment. And also part of the pressure is coming from provincial supply chain. They have a small pressure coming from COE. If we go to program 4, internal audit is projecting to underspend by 4 million. In the main, it is emanating from the newly created structure that they are currently filling. They had a lot of vacancies, and they are in the process of filling all those posts. Hence, they are showing that projected under of 4.2. And program 5 as well, municipal finance, they had some vacancies that emanated from resignations that they experienced as a program. And they are also in the process of filling those posts. The 1.8 relates to those posts that are vacant under program 5. If we move to the next slide, we're looking at economic classifications. By economic classifications, we'll start by the COE. I've already explained to say we have vacancies across the programs within the department. If we add them all, we're projecting to underspend by 16.2. However, that 16.2 projected under will be moved to this financial recovery plan that we are anticipating that we will spend in the current year, and it's a once-off exercise next year. When these posts are filled, we won't require to fund the financial recovery. Probably a very small amount will be needed. You'll see that now goods and services at high level is showing a pressure of about 14 million rand. Mainly that 14 million rand is coming from financial recovery plan and the bank charges. If we go to transfers are projecting to underspend by a small amount of about 280,000 rand. And payment for capital assets projecting to slightly overspend by 2.4. In the main, we have purchase orders that were issued in last financial year. As at the end of the financial year, they were not presented or delivered. As a result, we did not really request a rollover from public finance or budget office. We will be able to pay for those orders in the current financial year, and we will do the environments and adjustments. That information will be submitted to the committee. On overall, the pressure that is coming from goods and services and payment for capital assets will be offset by that saving that is reflected on compensation of employees. So it offsets each other. If we go to a lower level, looking at sub-program, I'll go quickly, I won't be in details. Starting with Program 1, the Office of the MEC, projecting to save 5.2. I will explain it. The office reduced the staff complement. Hence, I'm saying it's a saving, it's not an underspending. Also, on operational cost, e.g. S&Ts and events, the office has relooked at that and slowed down on all those expenses. As a result, we're seeing that 5.2 million rand of savings. Office of the HOD is showing that 16.9 million rand, which in the main relates to the financial recovery plan. All savings that we will see coming from all programs within the department at adjustment, will swap them all and put them under the Office of the HOD to offset that pressure. That sub-program finance project to fully spend its budget. Then corporate services project to underspend by 5.4 million rand. It's more like a saving because we noted the office accommodation. We're renting 2 buildings. Public Works concluded 2 extensions on 18 months basis. Both extensions, we were looking at the rental will be increased by an X amount. However, they did not increase the rental like it's been done in the other years. As a result, we are projecting to save that 5.4 million rand. And overall, the Program 1 is projecting to overspend by 6.5. However, that pressure will be taken care by savings coming from other programs. Program 2 is projecting to underspend by 1.8. Mainly, the savings are coming from COE, and to be specific, the sub-program that is having a huge underspending or saving will be public-private partnership. I think there is a post of a director that is currently vacant that they are currently busy filling. So that program will underspend by 1.8. And if we move to that program, Program 3, you will see second program, asset and liabilities. That's where banking or the bank of the province is. There is a pressure of about 3 million rand. Chair, that's an estimate. It might be slightly above or slightly lower than that because the bank charges, they are counted on the number of transactions that we run on the bank accounts. So the current estimate is that we might need about 3 million rand. And supply chain also has a small pressure of about 600,000 rand coming from COE. And accounting services, they got vacancies there. Those posts are listed there, and there's a saving of about 1.3 that offsets the pressure that is coming on other sub-programs. On overall, the net overspend is about 1.7. Program 4, internal audit, you will see program support is projecting to underspend by about 700,000 rand. Also coming from COE. Assurance services, it's a big amount that Ada spoke about 3.5. That's where there has been a new structure that is currently being implemented. The posts are being filled, but however, while the posts are being filled, we got the budget that was set aside for those posts from beginning of the financial year. So all that money cumulatively, we're looking at about 3.5. It might be more because as we look for staff, we sometimes go through the whole process and be unable to get to recruit people or recruit internally. When you recruit internally, you simply move somebody from his original post to a new post. Then the other posts become vacant and it still adds up on the underspending. So we will report to the committee as we progress with the financial year. So on overall, the internal audit projects to underspend by 4.2 million rand. Program 5, municipal finance, on overall, it projects to underspend by 1.8. Mainly, you'll see the biggest underspending is coming from municipal accounting and reporting. They also have posts that are vacant due to resignations. And the time it takes to fill the post, we have to submit, request the approvals, advertise. Now they have added more activity in that process that before some of the posts are advertised, they must go and be job evaluated. So it will add about another 30 days to 60 days to do that process. So it's most likely that we'll see not much change when it comes to underspending, because as much as we want to fast track the process, but some of the approvals that we require, they are outside of the department control. And those that are within the department as well, they are time consuming to do. But we're doing our best to make sure that all the posts are filled. On overall, Chair, as you see, municipal finance will ended the first quarter with was it 21% of the expenditure against a budget of 74 million rand. Chair, my presentation ends there. Maybe the MEC will highlight that during quarter 1 as well, the department was undergoing the audit, and it has since been concluded in end of July. I'll leave it to the MEC to report on that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Hopefully those are good news. Yes, no, thank you so much, CFO. I'm not sure if you want to take on that, Honorable MEC, before we can give the next present.
I think, Chairperson, I'm not sure why they give it to me. I didn't do the work. The Treasury team did the work, but we're delighted to say that we have the 17th consecutive clean audit with not one issue raised. So I think they need the credit, not myself. Thank you, Chair. So well done to Team Treasury.
Well done. Thank you so much. We appreciate that, MEC. 17 years in a row, it's not something small. We appreciate that. That it means there's work that is being done as it has been, over the years. Thank you so much for the Team Treasury. Of course, Honorable MEC, when that happens, you take credit. It's the team, of course, that is working, but ultimately the political head always take credit for that. for marshalling the forces, into the right direction. Can we then take the next presentation? I believe you said it's going to be presented by someone online. Oh, yes, non-financial, sorry, yes, Tembi.
Yes.
Oh, okay, before we get into the last one. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to you and good morning to the committee, morning to our MEC, HUD, our leadership, as well as the colleagues. Chairperson, my presentation is not going to be a very long presentation. It is our performance in terms of what we have planned, in terms of our strategic plan, and as well as our APP. Chairperson, you would recall that as a province under the new administration, we have received the national priorities, and we had 3, which Treasury is responding to the 2, which is the driving of the inclusive growth and job creation, as well as build a capable, ethical, and developmental state. And in terms of the province, we also adopted the same, and Treasury remained at contributing to the 2 priorities, as I have mentioned. In terms of our strategic plan for the 5 years, which is starting in this financial year, which I'm reporting the first quarter of the implementation, we also have developed 3 outcomes as a department that we are responding into towards both the national as well as the provincial priorities. And Chair, it must also be noted that in our outcomes, we are also have an outcome that is also responding in terms of the mainstreaming of the targeted or the vulnerable groups. So now, Chairperson, I'm going to look at the performance for us for the quarter. In terms of what we had planned for the department for quarter 1, we had implemented 21 indicators, and we have fully achieved 20 indicators, and 2 indicators could not be fully achieved, which then gave us an overall performance of 91% for the quarter under review. There's 2 offices that are contributing, or 2 indicators rather, that are contributing. Chair, I'm not going to go through all the other slides. If we may jump to slide number 7. One of the indicators that we could not fully achieve, Chair, we had set ourselves a target of 100% in terms of paying off all our invoices or valid invoices to the suppliers. Unfortunately, there was one invoice, Chair, that was unfortunately not submitted to our central point of where the invoice gets to be submitted. Hence, then there was a delay in that invoice being paid on time. Then the second indicator where we could not achieve is what the HOD had, as what the CFO also made mention of. The province was moving from version 5 of BES to a version 6 with all the other national departments as well. Then because of that, there was a delay. Hence, then we could not attend to the calls within the hours that we have set for ourselves, because some of the queries had to be logged with national to get them resolved. So those were the only 2 indicators, Chairperson, that we could not achieve fully as a department. I come to the end of my presentation, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Very short and sweet. Thank you so much. I was not expecting that you would finish so quickly. Thank you so much. Then we can take the last one. I believe. Or HOD will take us through. You are welcome, HOD. Congratulations again to you for your 17th. I nearly said second. 17th clean audit without any issues. You are welcome. Please take us through your presentation.
Thank you very much. And
sorry, just one second, HOD, Honorable Brotherson.
Thank you, Chair. Do we have this presentation? I know it was just laid on table this morning, but did we receive this presentation on the dashboard?
We have not yet. Can we request that we be shared that? Thank you so much, Honorable Brotherson. We request, it's my, I took it for granted. My apologies for that. Can we request that we be shared that presentation, HOD? But over to you.
Thank you very much. If I could just ask Secretariat to allow me to share my screen. What we're going to be doing is just giving you a quick demonstration live on the system. It's not a presentation in PowerPoint, but it was just to show the members what those look like. And I think what we would then do is on a quarterly basis, we would then submit for each department to the legislature so that you're able to use those reports. We may even be able to look at user access by the legislature so that you can also access the system. So if the members could just confirm once they can see it.
Yes, we can see it. It's quite nicely appearing. Of course, some of us are a bit older. We do no longer have sharp eyes. You know, it's very far.
Yes.
But I thought it is me alone, but it seems everyone else is unable to see it. I'm fortunate that I've got a computer closer to me where I'm able to see it. I'm not sure what other ways you can share with us a copy via the email to see Pamandla Cili. If you can just share that so that honored members, while you go through, they are able to read through. If you can share it on the email, I'm sure you've got the email for Mr. Cili. It would be easier that way.
All right, Chair. What I will do is I'll ask Mr. Shezi that's in this meeting just to do some screen grabs and just email it through quickly to the committee because I'm actually live on the system right now. So I'll just ask Mr. Shezi that's in the meeting just to do that quickly.
Oh, okay.
Honourable members, if I can just give you a sense of, and I think this is just a taste of what the system can do, and perhaps would need a little bit more time given the time pressures you mentioned earlier. But in the main, this is a dashboard that was created to try and give oversight, HODs, MECs, interested parties, a sense of the financial position of departments rather than going through pages and pages of documentation, but to give you a snapshot and then obviously where the areas are red to then go into those detailed reports to see what in fact is the financial situation. So you'll see at the top here, we've got all the different departments in KZN. We can then look at the different financial years. So we have gone back in the respective financial years, and then we can either report on a quarterly basis or on a monthly basis. So I'm just going to give an example. Now that you've just seen those presentations, if we look at, for example, Department of Education, and we look at them in the last month of the financial year, what this gives us an indication, first of all, is the area around cash. And you can see, as the MEC had indicated, there's a significant amount of payments that were put on the system that were not processed at the time of the end of the year. But if we then look at the first three blocks, and I'll talk to them given that they are quite small on the screen. The first one is around revenue. So it gives you an idea of what was planned to be collected in that month, what was actually collected. Then you would project to the end of the year and you'll be able to then compare it against the annual budget. Now, the reason there's zero is because we're in the last month. So obviously when you're in March, there won't be any projections. So here you can see that under collection that Hobby presented on. If you look then at expenditure for the Department of Education, you can see here that they spent 63,738 against their budget of 63,221. And as we know, that's an over expenditure. And we know that there was unauthorized expenditure. The same with infrastructure. Will give you what was planned for that month and then also what is projected for the rest of the year and what against the actual budget. Then we've also included indicators such as strategic capacity, because this is important to ensure that the right skills are in place. So we indicate whether the roles of the accounting officer, CFO, head of supply chain, and head of internal control are in fact filled. At education, they are filled. We then also bring in what percentage of the targets were achieved, and in this instance, it was 80%. Then we look at the accruals and payables, and as you saw in the presentation, quite disturbing the number in terms of what they have in their accruals, and also what's important to compare it to last year in terms of how much it's grown by, and also the aging of that debt that is owed. Then we also have a block on governance, and again, we look at the vacancy and internal control units, because internal control is one of your many lines of defense and picks up issues before payments are made, picks up issues before awards are made. We also look holistically in terms of the departmental's vacancy rate. Then the issue of resolving audit findings, you'll see it was quite low, only 56%. What's important here is that obviously if they don't resolve those issues, they're going to come up again in the audit. And the AG are becoming quite firm about where departments have not resolved audit findings from previous years. They then become an audit matter, an audit reporting matter. Risks, it's also critical that we manage our risks, and they only dealt with 64% of the actions that were required to mitigate risks. Then we look at the functionality of the risk committee, the ethics committee, and whether the accounting officer actually attended the audit committee. All of these are important from a governance point of view. Then we look at key accounts, and we look at whether payments are being made on time. We know education is really struggling in this regard. 51% of their payments were made on time. Are they complying with month-end closures? Yes, they are. What is the irregular expenditure situation looking like? 275 million rand was what is incurred in the last financial year. Whilst it's less than the previous year, 275 million is still too high. And then you can see the fruitless and wasteful expenditure compared to last year. There's also been a decline there. We also then track around SEM, how they're progressing against their bid plan. And if it's zero, it's usually because they haven't given us a report. They're also expected to report to us if there are any deviations. And again, we haven't received reports in that regard. We then report on how they're spending against women, youth, Black people with disabilities. And also there's a report on employees that appear on the central supplier database and whether they've resolved those, because staff should not be registered on the CSD. So that's another area that we focus on. And then, of course, your debtors age analysis. Again, you can see there that they are owed 276 million rand compared to last year. So there has been a decline, which is a positive trend. So this is just to give you a sense. As I said, all the departments are there. If we look at it on a monthly dashboard point of view, you'll see a lot of the rest of the information is not there because that is reported on a quarterly basis. So again, this gives you a good sense of the information. So I think the easiest thing for the committee would probably be to give the Secretariat access to extracting reports, not necessarily putting any information in, but really to extract reports so that if you're meeting with a particular department, you would then be able to immediately pick out this information, which can then assist the committee on focusing on those critical areas. I think I'll stop there. Thank you very much, Chair.
No, thank you so much, Shoti. It assists your last sentence. I think it really would help us a lot as the portfolio committee. But I think the dashboard, the system is good. You know, it's able to just take us through into the department immediately. Thank you so much for that. Before I give in members, Honorable MEC, if there's anything? No. Okay. Honorable members, here is these three presentations. Let's start with Honorable Dex, Honorable Seme, Honorable Brother said, and then Honorable Ishana. I'm checking on colleagues who have joined us online if there is anyone. No one at the moment. Okay. You just shout, honorable members on the platform if I do not see you. Let's start with Honorable Dex.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable members and officials from the Treasury. I heard Honorable Sema says when you say Honorable Dex, you say Haibo. It's Women's Month. You're supposed to give women first. It's Women's Month, but anyway, thank you for giving me the first preference. Yeah, Honorable Chair, just an observation that I think I should make regarding the first thing I want to do is this observation regarding the 17 years of clean audit. I just done the calculations here quickly. The African National Congress took over from the IFB in 2004. And within that first, if we say it's the 17th year of clean audit, that means when the African National Congress took over the province within their first term, they started producing clean audits right until last year, and then they hand over to the GNU. So my observation is not actually that the GNU have delivered clean audits. This has been the norm for quite 17 years since the ANC took over power in this province.
Hey, leave the IFP alone.
I will not congratulate the ANC because But that's the reality of the situation, Honorable Chairperson. Yeah, that's the first thing, Honorable Chairperson. Chairperson, the issue of accruals. The IFP whip, Honorable de Klerk, used a nice term for it, kicking the can down the road. I think it's a problem. It's a problem. And I heard one of the presenters said that what the health department did not pay the last financial year, those payments will be made this year. Now, this is the issue that we have as Umkhonto that we have raised time and again in our debates, that cutting these budgets will not solve this problem. Cutting budgets will not solve the problem. That's not the solution to the problem. I'm not saying that we're not saying that there must be uncontrolled expenditure and stuff like that, but cutting the budget cannot. It's been proved internationally. These measures, I will not use the term because I do not want the Honourable MEC to say I'm raising this term again. I will not use that terminology for it. I'll just say cutting budgets will not help us in the situation. There must be other ways of dealing with this issue. Because the MEC says that it will take us 7 years to get out of the situation. I think it will take much longer. The way we are budgeting currently, it will take us much longer to get out of the situation if we're ever going to get out of the situation. And I've said it during the debates too, that within the first 6 months, departments will overspend. There will be over-expenditure. We approve, it's like a coast budget because you approve this thing knowing fully well that there will be over-expenditure because the budgets are not enough for the departments to operate. So they're definitely going to go into over-expenditure. Then when we want to hold the departments accountable, we want to attack officials and we want to fight with officials in Scopa. When we knowingly cut the budgets and we know the result of it, there will be over-expenditure. And actually, Chairperson, this thing concerns us very much as Umkhonto because you are creating problems for us. Because when we take over the province of KZN, we're going to be in serious problems because of what you are doing currently. This thing is going to come back and bite Umkhonto. It will become our problem at the end of the day. Because you are going to take the province, this thing will be our problem. And you're putting us deeper and deeper into trouble. When we take over this province, we'll be in such a mess that I do not know what we're going to do. And this thing, we're very concerned, worried about what's happening here. We're seriously, honestly concerned. I understand that you'll believe genuinely that the way you are doing it, you'll want to get out of the problem. I believe that you'll genuinely believe that there's the way out. But we don't believe there's the way out of the situation. So that create problems in the long run. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Dex, I like how you look at things. We're already in the second year of this administration, but you believe that you are going to be in charge. I like it, but I'm not there. But I think this is the issue of accruals. Really, it's a serious matter, that I think we need to deal with. But I'm going to give honourable members a chance to really have a bite on it. There is nothing wrong, though, as we proceed, and I hope Honourable Sam will not be scared to congratulate the ANC, for the good performance over the years, and congratulate the MEC here, for continuing in there. There is nothing wrong from your side, Honourable Dex, to say you can't say it. Where is due? You see the criticism must be open. Where it is due, criticize. Where there is a credit, we give it. I'm just saying that in passing. Honourable Sam.
Thank you very much, Chair. Stop putting words in my mouth now. No, thank you, Chair, and thank you very much to everyone that has presented today. I have quite a number of questions to pose, even though they come from a deep frustration, I must say. The MEC opened and clearly said that we are in a place where we're facing billions of accruals. Obviously, MEC, that wasn't good as an opening message, I must say. So with you alluding that we have mechanisms in place to address this issue, I would like to know as to what mechanisms are those, and also, can we be perhaps given the exact time frame as to how long will this take for the department to be able to put the issue of accruals to rest, and finally get to a stage where they actually spend what they have budgeted for? With the Department of Education, it is said that it is set to start at a deficit with the under collection of over 21 million rands. And the MEC has clearly said that on his opening again, which I find very strange and frustrating for someone heading the Department of Finance to accept and understand this, knowing the implications, of course, Chair. Now, my question again with this department in particular is that with all the issues facing this department and all that's going on in it, what has the MEC done to deal with these issues decisively and sort these financial issues faced, also giving us clear timelines as to when does he envisage that this department will be okay and back on track? Because we want to hold him accountable for what he says today, the next time he sits on that chair. Because it seems like every time when he sits there with his team, they're going to sing the same tune. All the time, we're hearing the same tune. The under collection of 100 million rands by the Department of Health, Honorable Chair, how is this possible? How do you plan to also deal with that, knowing, of course, the issues we face again with this department? We cannot be experiencing so much funds being under collected. I will not go to the issue of the unaudited expenditure, unaudited presentation that has been presented to us, simply assuming that we all know the implications of being given unaudited figures. Mine on that would be, why? Why are we being given unaudited reports? Why? When is the audited report going to be completed? And why shouldn't we wait for it to be completed so that we do not find ourselves being told that some information was not included, it only came out of the audited report? Why can't we wait for the audited ones? I mean, on accruals, the payables are said to be 7.7 billion accrued, but they are unaudited, which means they can still go up from that 7.7 billion. Be more, it can still be more. So you do not take us seriously, guys. 57 posts were delayed due to a late approval from the Premier. I mean, why? Do you even understand how urgent and what implications are all these shenanigans are? We were delayed approval, if I may ask. Are they even approved now? When is the Premier planning to approve them if they're not? Strategic vacancies such as Executive Manager for Assets and Operations, SCM Compliance Officer, the Fleet Manager, delayed. Honorable Chair, how is this department expected to perform? The Provincial Budget Analyst Coordinator post is being delayed. What causes the delay? Are they now appointed? If not, when are they going to be appointed, Honorable MEC? Several water care projects did not spend as they planned due to delays. Vehicles ordered, not delivered. The report you're giving us. Are we being taken seriously? Why? Has anyone been held accountable for all this? No, I guess not, because the audit hasn't been done, Anish. So it cannot be proved that it's true or not. There still has to go under audit. Anish. With quarterly performance report under program 1, I see we're sitting at 50%. What steps are in place to improve that, the administration? It's too much, MEC, together with your team. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
You came gun praising today. You were not playing, eh? Yeah. Of course, the MEC would and the team answer on the issues, but the reality is that we're still going to have a hearing with the departments. Yes, we're still going to have hearings with the departments that are concerned. You know, I believe Friday we've got some, and then the other following week would have some hearings also, where the departments would answer for themselves. I'm sure in the areas where Treasury is unable to, respond, departments must respond on their behalf. You know, of course, the Treasury can do so much, but departments are also fully responsible for their own. The Treasury, when they talk about their own budget, they have to account for their own budget. But I'm not saying that they must not account. Honorable, I noted the HOD. When it's time for responses, we'll give you HOD some of the responses to respond. Can we go to Honorable Brotherset before we go to Honorable Ishana?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I'm happy to compliment Treasury on another unqualified, or as they refer to the media, a clean audit. In fact, Chair, that's to be expected. Treasury should always get a clean audit, because they are the powerhouse of accounting in the province. What I certainly will give, I think we should commend under the GNU, under this MEC, is the savings that have been generated. Perhaps that hasn't been seen before. And I think that is commendable. In terms of some other comments, as far as I understand, these are unaudited because the AG does the auditing. And perhaps government process isn't covered in MBAs so these days, so we'll find that out. But anyway, let's get on to the actual questions. Right, so MEC, what I'd like to know is, we spoke about the ghost. Look, obviously COE is a major factor, and it comes from that inequitable share of what was allowed, what was budgeted for, and then the national wage agreement, and it's going to plague us for a long time. Do you believe that the audit of the ghost employees will bring us to a situation where it might be balanced out? Or do you think there's going to become the tough time where departments are simply going to have to cut and have to retrench numbers? I don't know if you've got any factors that could allow you to answer that question, but maybe a follow-up on that is, do you have any idea when we will be able to have an outcome on the ghost employee audit process? In other words, when will we be done with that, so we can get a picture of the playing field, whether that balances it out properly and allows us to recover, or whether or not there is going to be those tough decisions that need to be taken somewhere along the road. You referred to park assistance to the departments. Can departments be compelled to work with park to assist them with their financials? If park picks stuff up, can they be instructed to work with park, or is it completely on a voluntary basis? Then a question, maybe the last one to yourself, is we understand that the situation departments are in is that if they try to pay for everything in the current financial year, they will generate unauthorized expenditure. And so obviously they're kicking it down the road in terms of accruals. Are departments literally in a position between a rock and a hard place? The question I'm asking is, it's either unauthorized expenditure or it's an accrual. Is there a third way that you can advise departments to go down which avoids both of those? Or are they caught between that literal rock and a hard place? The last two questions I have may be possibly answered by other members of the delegation. The ZRHT presentation, we spoke about the fundraising program 3, I think it is, the fundraising. Now, we met with the department, I think it was last week or the week before, sorry, the entity. Oh, sorry, we met with OTP and we had reports on the entity during that meeting. And the beef production project was referred to, which I certainly know the MEC is very interested in. But we also asked the OTP then as to whether we could possibly have their final report, which we were told their final proposal was complete, but we still haven't seen it yet. So question number 1 under that is, have you seen it? And can Treasury give an idea of whether they think it's viable? The second sub-question under that is, they refer to a whole lot of infrastructure that needs to be created in terms of that beef production project. Where do they anticipate those funds are going to come from? Because the amount of money allocated to them was just to investigate feasibility of certain programs, but not actually the funding for building abattoirs, building feedlots, building all the infrastructure required for a significant beef production enterprise. So number 1, do you think it's feasible? Secondly, have they indicated anywhere, now, I'm sorry, it's a report I haven't seen, or a proposal I haven't seen, where the funding might come from to set the whole thing up, if it's a good idea. And then secondly, in their presentation to us, they referred to us, they explained to us about another possibility was student accommodation around the University of Zululand. That they would be interested in building student accommodation, which apparently is in dire need at that particular university, that could generate own income to ZHRT and possibly also the provincial fiscus. Has that been discussed with Treasury at all? Because once again, we haven't received any formal proposal on that, but I was wondering if they'd even raised it with Treasury. And then finally, access to the dashboard. I understand that the HOD went live this morning and gave us an idea. Is the dashboard, number 1, is it up and running? Is it being used on certain departments? Okay, and then the second question is, who will have access? Will we be only, a finance committee like us and like Scopa, will be able to only draw down reports? Or can we at any stage, will we at any stage be able to type in a certain code or a link or whatever the case may be, and actually go into the dashboard? Obviously, as a user only, we understand that I think it's obvious. So will we have access to it? And then finally, the HOD referred to interested parties. Could the HOD members tell us who interested parties are? Because is there possibly a scenario where an interested party who perhaps has knowledge of what is going on in the department, and if they had a user-only ability to look at the dashboard, could see something that is possibly out of kilter or out of line, and possibly they could say something's wrong there and indicate that to Treasury, perhaps in a whistleblower sort of fashion, if they were aware of something that is possibly not making sense on the dashboard because of information that Treasury might not have at that particular point. Thank you. Those are my questions for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Honourable Basiel.
Oh, thank you, Chair, and members of the team. My first contribution relates to exactly what Honourable Brautersen had said. It's the dashboard. My question is, will the dashboard cover the report on all expenditures relating to all the departments and the different votes? And will we have access to it? And I want to reiterate the reason why I say so. In order for us to play our role properly with regard to oversight, if we knew what was going on in the spending, in the budgets, in the departments, we'd be able to make more informed contributions and not just accept answers which are given to us. For example, in KZN, regarding housing and human settlements area of operation, we've addressed the question of need for housing in all over the province, from KwaZulu-Natal, eThekwini, here in different areas in Pietermaritzburg, in Pendle, around the Greytown area, Msinga, etc. Now we're told that there's no budget for housing. When we sit here in this meeting and then we say there's an underspend in human settlement. So if we had to see it on a running basis, then we'd be able to anticipate this and make suggestions for how finances can be reappropriated and how we can address those pressing needs by the homeless. That's just one example. There's another example, for example, in tourism. There's also an underspend there, and there are different developments which are outlined in your reports. There is an area in Greytown, Lelani Hot Springs, which could be an area that could have been developed, and we could see this now and say there's an underspend, and we could make recommendations and say, can there be finances appropriated to a development there? It's an area where employment is so low and development is needed. So that is the reason why the proposal is that the dashboard needs to be wide enough to cover all the different votes, and we need to have access to it so that we can make our contribution and represent constituencies in the way we're supposed to. Then we've heard the report that Department of Education, for example, and while I'm on this subject, let me say that this time period we have for questions is too little. We're not going to be able to deal with it properly, because I'm just picking up a few areas we can ask questions with, but there's much more. The unauthorized expenditure of over $1 billion. Now in government we see that the unauthorized expenditure is at an alarming rate, and you hear it going through COCTA, through transport, through every department. We hear about the billions and millions that just at the end of the day get written off. Again, it is something that if we had access to it, we'd be able to pick it up much. We also would be able to make some contribution so that it ceases and doesn't continue. The other question relating to that is, what kind of consequences do people face? We haven't received a report of what consequences. Where was the unauthorized expenditure? How did it amount to $1 billion? What measures were taken? For example, in the media, we've heard about Pasina Retail, 2.1 billion rand tender to centrally manage the NSNP across the province. When this is just from the media, and where the company failed to deliver meals, insufficient foods, late deliveries, sometimes expired and rotten food. We know there have been probes and questions that were asked, but we don't know. We don't know whether this has been resolved by replacing the one centralized service provider with many different service providers. And so those are the things that maybe a dashboard would be able to would answer, or maybe would allow us to make a meaningful contribution. And then on the clean audit, I have a different. My view is, let's take a house or let's take a housewife, for example, or the chef who prepares a wonderful meal, and there's a budget for that meal. There's so much on meat, so much on groceries, so much on the people who are going to serve it. There's so much of money set aside for cleaning, for dishwashing liquid, for waste removal. And then you conduct an audit with all the people who ate it. No one got sick. Everybody enjoyed the food. But unfortunately, it's a clean audit, wonderful audit, but unfortunately there's 50% of the people who are still hungry. So we must be able to measure our performance in terms of poverty and poverty alleviation. That is our stand. Now these reports, which I've just started to peruse, open up many other questions that we need to prepare and ask for more information. So that is why I say I'm just picking up on a few things, but we need much more time, perhaps maybe email questions, or at the 2 sessions that have come up, which I don't even think that would be enough to go through and properly deal with these reports. Receiving it now does not give us time to analyze it and prepare questions. That is it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. I'm just throwing it to you, Honorable MSc and your team. You'll decide which one you would respond to, because some of them, of course, they belong to the departments, which we must direct to. So you use your own SIF, to sieve, on some of these issues. But I think, Marwan, what would be your advice in us dealing with the issue of the accruals that we see? What should be our approach with the departments? I'm not sure if this is allowed really, to spend money that you do not have. You say, but because I'm going to be giving money in the next financial year, I will then spend and hold the payments and hand over to the next financial year those payments. Why do we sit here and approve and do budgets if officials or the departments would sit and say, no, it's fine, they can give us these 2 billion, but we're going to spend 6 billion, and we're going to hold the 4 billion and show the expenditure of our 2 billion that we've been allocated to. And I think it's high time that this thing must not be allowed. Now, I want to know, what advice would you give to the portfolio committee, as we are going to be meeting with the departments, as to how do we approach and deal with these matters? For me, these are very serious. This is very serious, because I feel bad that I stood here in this house, and I said we are happy with the departments that they've reduced their anticipated over expenditure, while they had not reduced, they just hide it under the accruals. I feel stupid really, that we are told that no, we have reduced our over expenditure from 5 billion, now it's 1.5 billion. No, we have now reduced our over expenditure from 1 billion to 500, and now we no longer have anticipated over expenditure. Boom! When we sit here, there is massive accruals. Something ought to be done in dealing with this issue of accruals, and I think we are allowing people to go home with crime, having committed crime, and we allow them that they must continue. When we say we must allow them to, over the years, I hear the issue of the budget cuts, but you spend when you see, I was a member of this legislature, I was running my own businesses. You see, I sell meat. I can't spend money that I do not have in my own business. I can't. You do not have that money, therefore you can't spend it. Now, I do not know whether this is happening because it's government. People go and spend money that they have not been given. You know, I don't know how this thing works. So if at your own budget, at your own home, you are unable to spend money that you do not have, you know, even your own overdraft, you get told that, look, we're charging you heavily. You know, your own credit card, you know, so you are able to plan around that. You can't just spend willy-nilly. So I think I'm just worried about this, and will not be doing justice for this government if we do not, you know, raise these issues to where they must be. So I'm just worried about that. I see these under other issues, but with regard to the Provincial Treasury itself, I think we must appreciate that you are at 91%. I think that's what the report is saying, you know, on the first quarter. You were at 91%, and clearly you mentioned what were the challenges for you to not to be able to fully meet your targets. You know, we must appreciate that. I was just checking also, we still do not have any member on the platform who want to ask any question at this point in time. MEC, I will give it to you before I give to the HOD. Yes, she has raised the hand, but I'll give it to you first to then take us through and guide probably even the other questions before we give to the HOD. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks for the questions and the comments. Let me firstly say that the reason Treasury's had 17 clean audits is that it's a department that puts principle before politics. The minute you put politics before principle, you don't get clean audits because you don't follow the PFMA, you don't follow Treasury regulations. It's got nothing to do with anything else. It's a department that is principled and it leads by principle, and that's what 17 years of clean audits has done. When we get a budget as a province, we all know that we get equitable share, we get conditional grants, and we get own revenue. And I get an envelope of money as the MEC of Finance, 158 billion in the last year. Not brown one, no, not a brown one. 158 billion, Chair. Now, some of our members must understand this because they're battling to understand the principle behind finance and how Treasury works. That 158 billion rand is allocated across all provinces, all departments in the province. When that process is done, there's nothing left in the envelope. The envelope's empty. So during a year, if the Department of Education comes to me and says, I don't have money, there is no money. If I need to find money, I've got to go and take it from another department to give the Department of Education. Or I've got to say to myself, the way we're doing the budgets are not correct. And I think I've spoken about that enough. I don't need to unpack that anymore. So when we talk about cutting budgets, you have to ask yourself, how did we get to this position where we are now? Why are we in the position where we're running a province and we're spending more than what we are actually receiving? The answer is simple, and I've unpacked this. And members can go back and have a look, and you will know, Chairperson, and those members that have been around for a while. We went through a 10-year period where our equitable share was cut by 68 billion rand. Every year, National Treasury said to us, you're not getting this, we're taking 12 billion this year, we're taking 8 billion the next year, and so it went over an 11-year period. National Treasury have never brought us back to our original baseline. Never. So you're in the meat business, one of the honorable members is in a guest house business. You know what happens. If you suddenly take 20,000 Rand out of your guest house, you've got to get another 40 people into your guest house to cover that 20,000 Rand that's been removed. So this is an inherited problem. There's no quick fix. If I could go to the National Minister of Finance and say, give us the 68 billion that you cut, this province would be styling. Imagine I put 68 billion back into the fiscus. We'd be on top of it. Now, over and above that, again, we must work with facts and not politicize finance. Compensation of employees and the increase in wage agreements. This province and all other provinces suffered over the last 3 years where the wage agreement was not funded. This is the first year that we've had a funded wage agreement. So you can add that on to the 68 billion that's been taken out of our fiscus. You don't just recover from that. So how do we recover from that? What we have to say to ourselves, and it's exactly what I said earlier, identify what the bottom lines are on our service delivery departments, health, education, social development. There's cleaning up that needs to be done. What is the minimum they require? In the upcoming budgets, we need to protect them, but it means we're going to have to cut the budget of Treasury, you have to cut the budget of the Office of the Premier, because the money's got to come from somewhere. It's not coming from heaven, and national fiscus is not giving us any more. So that is the reality. What departments have done, because they don't have the budget, and this has compounded the problem, Chairperson, is officials in departments spend money when they know they don't have the cash backing. So a CFO or an HOD will come to me and say, MEC, I want to do this. And I say, do you have the budget? Yes, it's in my budget. Do you have the cash to pay for it? No. Well, then you can't do it. But we've got officials that are just doing as they please. They are just spending money as though there's no tomorrow, which is why we've put the steps in place, which I spoke about, the financial recovery plan, which means that the Provincial Executive Committee will now get monthly reports. There's clusters, there's certain reports that need to be submitted where we can monitor each and every department. The reality is we've never given finance a priority in this province. In committees, and I remember when I was serving in this very committee, finance was normally between you and lunch. So finance, has everyone agreed, approved, move on. And then you've got balance sheets, which most people are not interested in. Unless you're an accountant, you're not interested in it, which is why we've put this dashboard together. Now, this dashboard at a glance will tell you the health of the department. That's why I asked for this dashboard to be developed, because it'll give people exactly as some members have said in the House. It'll give you a quicker understanding of what the challenges are before it becomes a crisis. If we'd had this dashboard 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we wouldn't be sitting with the accruals that we're sitting on now. And I want to repeat, Chairperson, I'm not here to sugarcoat finance. If some members in your committee feel that I'm spreading a negative message, it's the reality. You can't sugarcoat finance, unfortunately. Otherwise, I could have come here today and I could have said, you know what, the closeout, the unaudited closeout report, it's not that bad. It's 100-odd million overspend, and it's 17 million short in revenue. And you would have bought it. You would have gone away said, oh, well, it's not too bad. I'd be misleading you, and I'd be misleading the people of this province. So that's why there are members that need to understand how finance works. I'm not here to play politics. I'm here simply to get a job done. So let me just touch on some of the other questions that were asked. The unaudited, I think Honourable Broudeseth understands finance. It's unaudited because the Auditor General hasn't done it. This is a process. If you want to change the legislation, you're welcome to do that. But that's the process. That's how finance works. Questions about health and under collection, and that's why I'm giving you this report. So that when you call health in here, give health hell. You say to them, ask them the questions you're asking me. Why? That's part of your responsibility, your oversight responsibility as a member. Every single department will appear before you. You then have the opportunity. As you were saying, Chair, a lot of the questions should be directed to you had questions about the Premier as well, which you could also raise with him. On the question about ghost employees, I'm hoping that by mid-September that will be complete. It's very difficult to estimate a figure, but I've had engagements with the Department of Education and the MEC, and we're estimating about R1 billion that could be saved out of ghost teachers. But add on to that staff loans. We need to sort out personnel. All of that needs to be tidied up. Once we've done that, we can allocate education what it is that they need, and hopefully they're not going to end up with these large accruals. Audit and risk does audit and risk across all departments. So the Audit and Risk Committee is broken up into clusters, and they all have a cluster, and they do the audit, and they highlight any risk challenges. It's not their job to assist with financials. That's what the team sitting here need to do. And I agree with what you said, and the chair also raised it. Officials should spend what they have, not what's in the budget, because the budget and the cash on hand doesn't always tie up. I haven't seen any feasibility study from the Office of the Premier. Again, I think that's a question for the Office of the Premier. The dashboard, my HOD can help, but this meeting today and the provincial finance is not a secret. It's not a closed meeting. It's open. The day we close these meetings, we're in trouble, because then we're putting politics ahead of principle. And I'm very happy that if it is practical, that members who have an interest in finance have access to that dashboard. Because again, it answers some of the questions that were raised. We can deal with issues earlier. Each and every department has a dashboard. So it's not limited to any particular. If you're on sports, arts and culture, if you're on health, education, you'll be able to sort that out. I think I've answered the others. What do we do about accruals? Strict fiscal discipline with consequence management. I can unpack that in great detail, Chair, but do you want me to unpack it? Okay. First of all, what we've got to do is, as an executive, we have to admit that we've got a problem. We have to put a strategy together to be able to deal with that problem. Now, there is an extensive strategy. You've heard that we're having to spend some of our budget on that strategy. It's been adopted by Cabinet. I was of the belief, and my HOD can correct me, that strategy was to be workshopped with the legislature, so that finance committees and all committees understand exactly what it is that we're going to be doing. And it is very stringent, but if we don't enforce it at all levels, whether it's at committee level or whether it's at the executive level, we're not going to get it done. So we've put together dashboard, for example. We're launching the procurement system. These are all systems that will help us bring the situation under control. So the procurement system, what we're designing in that is that a department will not be able to procure anything if it doesn't have the cash backing. Now CFOs, HODs can go out there, they can do work, and they don't have the money in the bank. That system will stop that at the source. That's an important thing. So the sooner we implement this, the better it is for all of us. And that's why I said, and you know, some members might not like it, this ship is not going to turn around in a year. 68 billion doesn't just go away. It's dragging us down. And slowly but surely, we've got to put systems into place. And the HOD must please inform you, Chair, about the recovery plan and unpacking it with the committees in the legislature. I know I did raise it with the Speaker of the legislature. Chair, I think I've taken up more than enough time. I've tried to cover overall because there was a lot of loaded questions, which I've tried to deal with. Okay. Now I'll hand over to my officials. Thanks.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. Some of the issues we are raising is that I was counting. I did what Honourable Dex was doing, counting back. You know, the 68 billion we are talking about that we suffer from is the Guptas. You know, so I was counting. You know, I'm doing exactly what Honourable Dex was was doing. You know, we learn from the best. Yeah, so that's where the source of our problems comes from. I'm really trying to move on because we literally have got 10 minutes that we must deal with all of these issues. I'm worried, MEC, there's a tendency now, the Accountant General is not attending our meetings. I do not know why. You know, and for me, that's a problem. You know, when we require a full complement here. So that because he or she accounts on various issues. So when the Accountant General do not attend our meetings, I've got a serious problem. And I've noticed that it's continuing now. I'm worried about that. Yeah, and I think that must really stop. DDG Shezi, before I give to the HOD.
Very much, Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Members. Good morning. Let me try and also respond. On the issue of the unaudited report, the numbers that are contained in the report are the numbers that departments have submitted to the AG. So those numbers will no longer change. The numbers that change are the preliminary numbers because departments still do the journals. So these numbers, Honourable Seme, now they are the final numbers that have been submitted to the AG. Now in terms of process, we do this detailed report and we bring it here. But also we do another detailed report mid-year that we bring to the committee, which then details how the departments are performing mid-year, and it gives the members an opportunity also to track what the departments are doing. In terms of the delays in approving posts, I think previously the committee did receive reports from the Office of the Premier, because in terms of the Treasury circular, when departments want to fill posts, they submit requests to the Office of the Premier, they log them in a system, then they track them in terms of the process. So I think that maybe that request can be sent to the Office of the Premier. You can track each and every request to fill posts, when it was received, whether it was referred back to the department for further clarification, and when it was finally approved. So there is that system within the Office of the Premier that does track, and then we can track where the delays are. The provincial coordinator post, I'm assuming that relates to vote 6, Provincial Treasury. We have shortlisted. Unfortunately, when we advertised that post, we received over 100 applications. We had to go through the shortlisting, and now HR is actually doing the technical verification, and that post we're hoping to be filled by September. Has anyone been held accountable for the delays? I think we will see that when the report from the Office of the Premier comes through. I will then, on the issue of the unauthorized expenditure and consequence management and that has been done, I would request that maybe the honorable members also see the SCOPA reports on the unauthorized expenditure, because that's where it's detailed in terms of what it is and what it has been done. I think my MEC has talked to the issue of the proposals from the Zulu Royal Household Trust. As Provincial Treasury, we have not seen these proposals. Needless to say that in the past, when they have put together proposals for generating own revenue, those proposals, they don't achieve any positive own revenue. Hence, the trust is still heavily reliant on government. I think I would also like to touch on the issue of the under expenditure that is reflected in the reports, in particular the Human Settlements Development Grant. This was a specific allocation that we received in the second adjustments estimates. It came in March, so it was too late, and it was specific. It was funds that were stopped from other provinces who were not spending their money, and it was allocated to KZN. It was specifically for the Alu Ridge project. It was not just a general human settlements development grant. So the delays then were between Msunduzi municipality signing the agreements with the Alu Ridge developers so that that money could be committed and spent. But it was not just a general human settlements development grant that was underspent. It's specific for Alu Ridge. And I think that maybe on the other issues on the under expenditure, we'll pick that in the detailed report. And as I'm saying again, mid-year we will elaborate on where we are. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. HOT, can we give it to you for 3 minutes, not more than that?
Thank you very much. I think what I would suggest in terms of, you had asked what can the portfolio committee do around accruals. I think in terms of the engagements with the departments, it would be useful to ask them to share their financial recovery plan, as well as they also had payment plans for their creditors, to give you a sense of where they are with that. We obviously do also give, as the team have indicated, the in-year monitoring report, as well as mid-year reports that are quite detailed, including the booklet that the member was holding up. There really is a lot of information in there. The dashboard is really just to give you a high-level overview of what it is that we're trying to achieve. I think in terms of the unauthorized expenditure, as Nelly indicated, this has to be processed through SCOPA. It cannot just be written off by any department, as well as the consequences have to be reported to SCOPA in terms of what has been done with, what they have done in that regard. In terms of our underachievement of 50% in the one program, there really is just one indicator. As a department, we achieved over 91% of our targets, and there are no areas of concern. There actually were quite a number of areas of overachievement as well. I think then, Chair, with the time frame that we've got, just one additional item to add is that in education, we implemented the Section 18 of the PFMA, where they cannot issue any orders without Treasury's approval. And this is to prevent an accumulation of accruals and them overcommitting the department. So we would welcome a presentation on the financial recovery plan. It is very extensive, and I think will give the members a sense of comfort. But more importantly, will also assist you in your oversight. As the MEC indicated, we have requested for that presentation, but we haven't been given that time frame, a date on that. I think let me stop there. Thanks, Chair. Sorry, Chair, just one thing on the Accountant General not being present. We'll follow up on that. It is an instruction of mine that all my DDGs should be present. So I do not know. I did not receive an apology, so I will take that up. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, HOT. We would really appreciate to get that presentation. We would arrange with our team. Mr. Tridi here would ensure that on our last day, I think the 22 of August, if I'm not mistaken, where we would request to have that presentation. Thank you so much. Honorable MEC, before we close, any closing remarks? You are covered. Thank you so much. Honorable members, we appreciate MEC and your team. We appreciate your presence also with the detailed reports. And I think the other issues have been noted. We really thank you for that, for this presentation. Thank you so much. The meeting is duly closed. We are joining other committees as we now sitting. Thank you so much. You are invited to tea so that we do not have fruitless expenditure. So all of us are invited. Honorable Fraser, you are welcome physically, but we know you have been with us. Thank you so much.